That goes into our next we've been doing a series of positional assessments over the past handful of weeks, and we've done the secondary, we've done a couple other positions, and this week is particularly interesting. We're going to look at the linebackers, and this seems to be a group that once was ripe with a lot of talent, a ton of potential in the group, and now it's really got one solid player in Vontaze Burfict, and a lot of question marks and a lot of impending free agents coming up here in 2017. So, Scott, what is your takeaway from the group in 2016? And is this a position? I mean, we talked, I think it was last week, we talked about, some of the draft options at number 9 overall. Should linebacker be in the very, very serious conversation at number 9 and be whittled down to one of the couple of positions the team looks at that spot?
I think you kind of hit it on the head that, this is definitely not one of the strengths on the team defensively or offensively. Well, obviously not offense, but overall, because you look at the 3 starters, Carlos Dansby, he's a free agent this year. Burfict only has 1 year left. He's a free agent. And he's missed something like 22 games the last 3 seasons. He's, I think he's going to be 27 this year. So you hope he has a long career left, but after this year, there's no guarantee it's with the Bengals. Vinny Ray, the worst of the 3 starters, is the only one who signed past this year. They thankfully are giving less playing time to Malaluga, but he's probably going after this year too. You do have the bright spot with Nick Vigil, the young guy who got some playing time late, seemed to have some nice play. But outside of him, him and Vinny Ray are the only 2 guys they have signed past this year. And that's one of the things I think a lot of people don't really consider. And you look deeper on the depth chart, Flowers, this is his last year, but although he's more of a special teams guy. PJ Dawson, they don't want to play. And then Trevor Roach, this guy who seems to appear and reappear every few months. He seems to get added to the roster and removed from the roster. But you're looking at who they have on the roster right now. You have Burfict, who gets hurt a lot and misses a lot of time from suspension, and then a very young Nick Vigil, who you're kind of hoping will emerge into a decent starter. And then outside of that, you just have a lot of issues as far as depth. And I think the biggest problem you have that is because they've really struggled to draft linebackers. And it's kind of surprising because I think Marvin Lewis, wasn't he a linebacker? And I think he was a linebacker coach maybe when he started his career.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you look at the Baltimore Ravens when he was the defensive coordinator. There were guys, Pro Bowlers galore that he groomed. Not only Ray Lewis, who's a Hall of Famer, but remember Peter Boulware, the edge rusher? I mean, that guy was a great football player. They had a number of different Edgerton Hartwell, if you remember that name, was a decent player for the Ravens under Marvin Lewis. He groomed a lot of guys in Baltimore, and it's not coming over here. It hasn't come over to Cincinnati with the same success.
Yeah, you look at their top 3 linebackers this year, Dansby, Burfict, and Ray. Like, none of them were drafted by the Bengals. You have a couple undrafted free agents that they got because everyone passed on, and then Dansby, who I think was drafted by the Cardinals and kind of bounced around. But
right.
I decided to look up their drafts in the Marvin Lewis era to see why do we have why is there just no depth? Why do we don't see?
Oh, it's bad. It's bad.
And I'm not going to count Vigil because he's a rookie and he's only played 1 season and we don't really know what we have with him. So going back from that, 2015, you have the round pick PJ Dawson, 5 career tackles, 0 tackles last year. The year before, Marquise Flowers, a special teamer with 0 tackles the last 2 seasons. 2013, you have Sean Porter, 0 career tackles. You go back, the next guy they drafted was Dante Moak, who came in as a defensive end. But either way, if he's a linebacker, 0 career tackles with the Bengals, 7 for his whole career. The year before that, they took a 4th-round pick on Roderick Muckelroy. Again, 0 career tackles. The year before that, you had Ray Malaluga, who he's been a starter, but a lot of fans have grumbled that, he's not a good starter. He's a starter just because they have nothing better. The year before that, the 1st-round pick on Keith Rivers. We know how well that went. He got beat up by a wide receiver. He ended up getting traded for like a 5th-round pick. The year before that, A.J. Nicholson, 0 career tackles. And you have to go all the way back to 2005 when they drafted Odell Thurman, the last time that they really drafted a good linebacker, and he only lasted one season in the NFL. So you look at the linebacker position, I think that and for a team that doesn't like to, venture into free agency, I mean, that pretty much spells the issues they've had with linebackers. And some of the best ones they've had, Dahane Jones, free agent, who they got kind of on the cheap, Carlos Dansby last year. And so we've talked about people like, I think in the last podcast, we talked about Reuben Foster, maybe the one before, about them possibly drafting him at 9. And I just kind of wonder, as horrible as they've been at drafting linebackers, it almost kind of makes you think, well, if they draft him, he must not be good, right? Lewis has shown that he just cannot, for whatever reason, a guy who's supposed to know the position and I don't know. It's something that just baffles me.
It's puzzling.
You whiff one, but you can't whiff, for 15 years.
Yeah. And I mean, there's still, you left out even a couple more. There's David Pollock. There's Caleb Miller. There's Landon Johnson. I mean, you make the argument that the best players that the Bengals have actually drafted at the position were Landon Johnson, Odell Thurman, and Ray Maualuga. Now, obviously, Vontaze Burfict seems to be the best linebacker that Marvin Lewis has had in Cincinnati, but he wasn't drafted. So, at some point, it's almost like with these 11 picks, do you take do you take like 4 linebackers out of those 11 picks and just completely try and retool the unit? I mean, it hasn't been very good in recent years, and the draft record hasn't been very good either. There's also another free agent guy, if you remember, Nate Webster was a guy that they brought in, and he didn't play very well for the Bengals, and then he got into a ton of legal trouble. So, the track record is terrible. I'm glad you brought up Vigil, though, Scott. And Connor, I'm going to throw this over to you to start. In our YouTube chat, Teresa Krieger writes, first of all, longtime listener, we love hearing that. But do you visualize Nick Vigil stepping in as a full-time starter to replace the aging Dansby in the upcoming season? Connor, you kind of mentioned the Bengals' preference to their base defensive package is usually a nickel look. Scott alluded to the fact that we don't know exactly what we have in Vigil, aside from some really good numbers in the agility drills and things like that at the combine. First of all, are you high on Vigil, and do you see a big role for him in 2017 based on all the issues the team seems to have at the position?
I think the difference between me and a lot of people, just in general, but also specifically Bengals fans, is that I personally try as hard as I can, at least during this time of year, to just set aside what I think, like what I like or what my opinions, and just think from the standpoint of, okay, I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, what do I think? And my whole kind of thing that I've been railing on Twitter has been that there's no chance the team takes Reuben Foster at 9, and fans are super highly overrating him because he's an impact linebacker in the mold of Vontaze Burfict. All of that said, I think that Vigil, if I'm the Bengals, I play him year 2. I play him in the nickel because why not? Because there's going to be another Reuben Foster type of player next year, and you want to see, is Vigil that guy? Whether or not the Bengals do that is beyond me, but I think the fact that he got snaps late in the year when Maualuga wasn't, Maualuga, I don't know what happened with him, but he clearly fell out of favor because the team stopped playing him. I'm guessing he's gonna be a cap casualty. They can cut him for nothing anytime between now and June and lose $0. So there's really no reason not to cut him if you think that he's not a starter, because you're gonna pay him $3.6 million otherwise, I think. So I don't know. I think that if you're the Bengals, you put Burfict and Vigil in the nickel. And then, I don't know, you have Ray as your third linebacker in base packages. Ray's a pretty decent nickel backup linebacker. Maybe you add another guy later in the draft. The Bengals haven't taken a player in the front 7 in the first round since 2008. That's pretty crazy to me. They haven't taken a single defensive lineman or linebacker since Keith Rivers in the first round. So that was like something that was very telling to me. And I think that if you're the Bengals and you look at the draft board and you have guys like Solomon Thomas and Taco Charlton, who personally, I've said it on Twitter, I think right now that's my call. Last year I called Clayton Fedulum, and like when it was the 5th round, I said they're going to take Fedulum the 7th, and I nailed that. That's been my only call pretty much. And my call is, it's not 100% specific. It's okay, Solomon Thomas or Taco Charlton. Because honestly, if you're the Bengals, where else do you go? I mean, you have Green, and it'd be nice to have another receiver, but doing that would kind of just nullify the fact that you took Boyd and Core. And believe in both of those guys, because both of those guys made plays down the stretch last year. And then you have tackles. I don't know. I think that's a replaceable position in free agency. Even guard is a pretty replaceable position in free agency. And the Bengals clearly don't they don't value that position as highly as a lot of other teams do, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think. And then you have, Dre. And so if you're going to prioritize them, and that's kind of getting into a whole another issue, but I don't know. I think that if you're looking at the Bengals' priorities, I think you're taking an edge rusher. And so from that standpoint, and even if they did draft, Reuben Foster, does anyone really buy they're going to play him and just start him right away? I'm not buying that. And Vigil's a guy who, that's the thing, is if the Bengals believe Vigil is the guy they thought he was when they drafted him, which what has he shown that has changed any way that the team has, like, what has he done negatively in a way that would make the Bengals not believe in him to the point they believed in him last year, which I don't think he's done anything. Then what is the point in drafting a third linebacker when you have? I mean, I guess the only reason would be you don't think Burfict is in the team's long-term plans. That's really the only reason I can think of. And maybe I'm completely wrong on this. Maybe the team wants to have 3 good linebackers, but I really don't see the point in drafting a first-round linebacker when you have 2 guys who you hope. I don't know if obviously they're not confident in Vigil, but it's not just one of those things where you just spend a first-round pick on insurance, So I don't know. I could see D end, corner even, maybe tackle, but I think it's probably D end, maybe corner, maybe receiver, maybe safety if they want to change their philosophy on defense. But it's really hard for me to think anything other than edge rusher, and that's why I really don't buy the whole Vigil thing. I don't know, maybe add another guy in free agency, but right, it's a strange position.
With Reuben Foster, the thing that makes sense to me with it is something that Scott said just a couple minutes ago, and that is the issues with Vontaze Burfict missing games, whether it's injury, whether it's suspension, and you lose him out of that lineup. Granted, you've got some good players up front, and Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins. You got Andrew Billings coming back this year, so I mean they're going to be in decent shape up front. They do need some help, as you said, Connor. But I mean, you lose Burfict, and you've got these other guys, Vinny Ray, PJ Dawson, Vigil, who we don't know much about at this point, and there's just not a lot of sizzle in that middle of the defense. And I like Vinny Ray as a guy and as a even a football player, but he's still not. To me, he's fringe starter material in the NFL.
He's like replacement level.
Yeah, at best. And he's a guy that I used to coach high school sports, so I understand why the coaches love a guy like that. He's a good locker room guy. He'll do whatever you ask of him, and he'll give 110% at all times. But just the overall skill level just isn't, on par with other starting linebackers in the NFL. Still think you keep him around. Still think you rotate him in. But that's to me the Burfict situation. He's so
that's fair.
He's so volatile in terms of the suspensions and the way he plays. There's concussions, there's knee injuries, there's this, that, and the other thing. And, they would need some linebacker help. Scott, any additional thoughts on Vigil? I mean, do you see him getting a big role in 2017, or is he just going to kind of be another guy as the Bengals maybe reload the position in the draft?
I think you guys pretty well nailed it. With Vigil, I think the ideal thing, at least from the fan perspective, would be let's see Vigil, let's see Burfict out there. They seem to be the 2 best coverage linebackers. They seem to have the best instincts of the group. And like I said, I think we would probably all agree that Vinny Ray is someone who would be a great 4th linebacker, great backup, not exactly a guy you want as a starter. But as you said, let's say Burfict goes out, because we know he's going to miss time, and Dansby's a free agent. If he's not brought back, or someone else isn't brought back like him, now and Connor mentioned that we could cut Maluga. Okay, now you're looking at Vigil and Rage, your starters, which isn't exactly the most inspiring.
That's not ideal. Yeah, that's not ideal.
So I'd be surprised if they don't at least grab someone in the draft. Unfortunately, their track record says whoever they take. I'm going to say it's going to be a comp pick, maybe a guy in the 4th or 5th round who, if form holds, ends his career with 0 tackles in the NFL.
And just for a clarification for fans, a lot of people talk about Foster like he's the only guy who can run, who knows how to run. But other linebackers that they could take, Zach Cunningham, T.J. Watt, they'll probably go late first, early second. Gerard Davis from Florida, same time frame. Anthony Walker from Northwestern, maybe even a Kendall Beckwith from LSU. Most of those guys run around the same speed of 4.7-ish, and it's not perfect. But I mean, that's the thing is, I wouldn't say Foster's leaps and bounds quicker than everyone else, and everyone's like, oh well, we need Foster because we need fast linebackers. I think Foster is a guy who is Ray Mount. I mean, well, not Ray. He's kind of Vontaze Burfict. He's not the fastest guy on the field, but he's good. He can hold his own in coverage. Yep. So Burfict's probably faster than him. So I don't know. I just think there's other guys, and I don't think that it's as dire of a need that you have to take a guy in the first. But I mean, I totally understand the whole Burfict thing. I understand. I mean, I can see why fans believe that. I personally, I don't think that's what the Bengals are going to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you made a good point there, Connor, that you don't necessarily need the fastest linebackers, though it's great. You've seen it work for the Steelers in the form of Ryan Shazier, who has become a very good linebacker in the NFL. You don't need the fastest guy. You need very instinctual guys. And Vontaze Burfict, we all know the story. He ran poorly at the combine. He looked slow and out of shape and all this stuff. And you see him, he's still not the fastest guy on the field, but his angles are tremendous. His dissection of plays are tremendous. And that's what the Bengals need in addition to Burfict being on the field at that point. Connor, I'm gonna be the guy that one-ups you, buddy. Last year, I did a mock draft. You mentioned you had it. You called Clayton Fedulum in the last round. Last year, I did a mock draft. It was a 3-rounder, and it was early, but I had them. I had the Bengals taking William Jackson III in the 2nd round at that point, and Tyler Boyd in the 3rd round at that point. So I was close. I had him taking Darren Lee in the 1st round. They didn't do that, obviously, but I had to give you a little one-uppage. I had to be
fine. I
had to be quote unquote that guy, buddy. So
that's all good.
Anyways, that's our positional assessment of the linebackers. It's something that I think we all agree the Bengals got by with last year. It wasn't anything spectacular, especially when Vontaze Burfict wasn't on the field. So the Bengals need some heavy upgrading, and some big decisions are going to be made at that position, that group this year. So good stuff, guys. We're going to continue these positional assessments every week. And if you have thoughts on the linebacker or the linebacker group and what we said, or any other groups in the shows that we have, let us know. You can get in touch with us in a variety of different ways. We're on Twitter at BengalsOBI. You can shoot us an email, theobinsider@gmail.com. We also have comment sections and rating sections in the areas where you can download our content, whether it's YouTube, SoundCloud, or on iTunes. You can check us out there. We're also on Cincy Jungle. They put our show on every week, and we splice it up on that site as well. So check out our stuff. We appreciate it. Rate it, and get in touch with us. We appreciate it.